edition of the BFF Show. My name is Brendan.
I'm Franco.
Once again, back at it on AM Premiere. So happy to be here. We called each other up and said, today is White Tea Day, so good job, Franco.
Word.
That's it. You're so overwhelmed with joy about our white teas that you can't even speak.
So the
but
problem
Franco,
was,
how are you? Yeah, go ahead. You go.
My shirt's actually heather gray, so we can, maybe it's like white-ish tea, shades of white. Oh, that sounds terrible. That's like a bad 90s hip-hop band. Shades of gray, though, because white is a shade of gray, theoretically. So we'll go with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in honor of the NBA Finals, I'm wearing the failed campaign of the Clippers in last year's playoffs, getting knocked out in the first round. It takes everything. The irony is, they left a lot of everything on the floor because they didn't make it out of the first round. But that's where we start today, Franco. It is NBA Finals. Your Golden State Warriors are in. Coming from behind against maybe talk about that last Game 7 with the Houston Rockets where they went 0 for, I think it was 27 on threes.
Yep.
Which is potentially an NBA record of of a lack of threes. So that was an interesting game. And then we have the Cleveland Cavaliers who are in on the sheer strength of LeBron James, beating back the young upstarts of the Celtics, which is kind of funny to say because they get Gordon Hayward, they get Kyrie Irving back. So it's not like they're a young, scrappy team in my mind, but we can dissect that if you want. Sure. So let's talk about your Warriors first, Franco. Thoughts about that Game 7 and thoughts about their chances round 4 of Cavaliers versus Warriors.
Sure. So Game 7, it was a good game. It started off like many of the games in the series. The Rockets got hot. They shot a ton. The Rockets have a problem where they have a small rotation. So when you're only playing 7 guys, you tend to fade in the third and fourth quarter, and I think we saw that again. I think Harden didn't show up for that game. And as much as everybody wants to blame the referees and Chris Paul not being there, I think it had the earmarks of a coaching strategy that doesn't work in the NBA, and D'Antoni's been proven not to work. It's a fact. He's never won. So I'm happy the Warriors won. It was ugly at times, but they did win. Once they get Iguodala back, I think they're going to be on pace, and I think they do win. And I'm going to say Warriors in 6. Warriors in 6.
All right. I mean, I think it was. I caught a little bit of that game. It really fell apart for the Rockets in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And the second half in general, but the fourth quarter was just every three that the Warriors took, they got, it felt like. And it was just really burying the Rockets in that last second half. And then on the Eastern side, the Celtics just not enough against King James. Yep. And I don't know. And it's funny because, Franco, we talked about this, is he not as appreciated? And I think that, again, it's still... This is a weird finals, and I want to pose a question that I heard a lot on in articles and heard a lot on radio. If LeBron James loses, does this count, quote unquote, against his legacy in a way, or is it just by the fact that his exceptional performance during this playoff, kind of the fact that he got to the finals with this team of characters around him that don't really offer as much support as LeBron James is giving to the rest of the team? Is the victory itself the fact that he's even here in the finals and having the conversation yet again, round 4 between the Warriors and the Cavaliers? I tend to think that it would mean a lot if he won, obviously, but I do kind of feel like there's not a lot of pressure on LeBron James in this series because no one really expected him to get here because they kept saying it would take a superhuman effort. Well, he did provide that effort, and now he's in the finals. So this is an interesting conversation because it's no longer the narrative that LeBron can't win because that got wiped away when he was with the Miami Heat. Then it was he can't win in Cleveland. That got wiped away. So now you kind of have a clean slate where there really are no lofty expectations, and the narrative is just, wow, he got here. And I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, so that was quite the run-on sentence. I'm sure somewhere your English professor is rolling in a grave. Cheers to that.
I was just speaking, and it was just narrative, baby. Narrative.
It was very T.S. Eliot stream of thought, or Jack Kerouac on the road, like. So, and listen to that, Ant Premier. We're educating your audience. I hope you all Google both those authors. So the point being, I don't think it hurts his legacy to lose. I think it would have hurt his legacy if they wouldn't have made it to the finals and the Celtics would have beat them, which we both said would happen and we were wrong.
Yeah.
So whoops. But on the side of
Boo
that,
to us.
yeah, I know, boo. But I do think him being in this game helps his legacy. And let's say they push it to 6 or 7, I think it actually enhances his legacy because he lasted this long, especially after watching a Rockets team that was built to beat the Warriors struggle. I mean, to keep up with them in many games. So I think his legacy is safe. I think if he wins this, his legacy is cemented. Although I don't think it really needs to be cemented this way. I think we should probably accept that in the modern era, he's one of the best players ever. Like him or hate him, and I tend to hate him, but you have to give him the respect. And I think now, he already made the ice cream sundae. There's already a cherry on top. It's will he not get sprinkles?
I love that analogy, Franco. I love it. It made me hungry, so I think that it made me even more enjoyable. But I agree. I think that this is going to be a fun series. I think there's no weird narrative. The Warriors have won. LeBron James has won. I'm looking forward to just enjoying it, and hopefully that we don't get dominated with some of these what-if narratives, even though that's going to happen eventually. But now we can at least hopefully wait till the end of the finals to figure out where LeBron is going to go, quote unquote, if he goes, if he stays. But you offered your prediction, Warriors in 6. I'm going to say Warriors in 7. I think this goes Game 7. Let's really just push the narrative even further, Franco. Let's make this fun. All right, that's what I'm going for.
Yeah, you and the NBA both, because God knows the money isn't extending to 7, so they would love if that happened.
Oh, yeah. So let's stay in the world of the NBA and go to a really weird story that broke a couple days ago on The Ringer. Brian Colangelo, he is the 76ers president, and it came out that he may have up to five burner accounts on Twitter, meaning that he created 5 unique personas to critique 76ers players, to release information that only the team would have as it relates to medical issues, and to defend himself from attackers, and to make fun of the previous general manager, Hinkie, who kind of was all about the trust the process, the genesis of that narrative, and also to just in general kind of prop up his alternative thoughts and takes that he couldn't say via his own personal Twitter account. But now there's news that it might actually be associated with his wife, because it's her phone number associated with it. According to Philly.com, the 76ers are probably going to wrap up their internal investigation by the end of this week, which should be relatively short. You've only got to ask one question. Do you have 5 burner accounts, yes or no? And we'll see where this goes. But there are some sources saying, Franco, that he's going to get fired over this. So 2 questions for you. First, what was your thought when he read this story? And 2, does he get fired for it?
So the way I found out about the story is that my phone started blowing up with Bleacher Report reports saying the NBA reacts to Colangelo. So I thought he had traded away a draft pick, or I don't know, reignited his feud with Okafor, or said, haha, Nerlens Noel, you suck on the Dallas Mavericks. None of that. It turns out it's these 5 burner accounts. And that's where the story gets more bizarre. It was found by someone using an AI pattern recognition that matched the similar accounts they were all following, as well as the speech patterns in each tweet. God help us if AI is able to figure that out. There's some old accounts from when I was in college for all kinds of websites we probably should get rid of, because I'm sure there's a pattern in the way I had usernames, but not here nor there.
Yeah.
So that's weird all by itself. And it was given to a Philadelphia beat reporter who's been verbally, generally opposed to Colangelo, with the hope that it become a story. And here we are today. It is a story. As far as is it his wife or him, there's research that shows the phone number pretty much matches the number that would be associated with his wife's phone. However, I have a really hard time believing that his wife is the one doing the tweeting. It may be a family effort, on Tuesday nights we sit down at the table and we tweet together. Let's talk about this, let's tweet this way. Either way, I think he's guilty, whether his wife or he did it. I think he should lose his job for it, because information was given that affected the players in his organization as well as hurt the organization itself. And 3, I think all of our young users out there, let this be a lesson to you. Even if you hide your name, try to act as a different person and use a different profile picture, they will find you. You're never safe. But Brandon, please, your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just, you're right. I think he has to get fired because the fact that he released medical data into the open, that is a violation of trust of the organization, trust of the players. If you're a free agent, would you be willing to go into this organization if he was still around? I don't know. And then it's just the sheer, then you have the thought process of you are the president of a National Basketball Association team, and you are running around with 5 alternative accounts. 5 accounts. Franco, you and I can barely manage one Twitter account for each of us. We are not prolific tweeters, and we are rarely active on social media. So the fact that this man who has a much bigger priority in his life and job and career is able to swiftly and definitely, so up until now, transition between all of these accounts is just mind-blowing to me because I feel like I don't even have time to manage my own personal account. I think you have to fire him. I think you have to move on from it. I feel like it's probably going to happen again, or we find out about another GM that did the same thing. Kevin Durant did this. He had his own burner account that helped promote his thoughts and argued against people that were anti-Kevin Durant, which is also funny. So I think it's navigating social media and all of the new ways that it can really affect you. And we didn't even talk about this as a topic because I think maybe collectively we're just over. But the whole Roseanne Barr tweet that just happened and her losing her show over it. It's just 5 years ago, Franco, you and I probably would never have guessed that Twitter would blown up to this, where it is being carefully crafted in a journalistic investigation piece about Twitter use and the consequences associated with it. Where when Twitter came out almost 10 years ago. My goodness, it was not I don't think anybody could have expected that it would be at the level it is now. So I think it's a weird story. He's probably going to get fired, and I think it's going to cause every single NBA team to start drafting clauses in their future contracts with players and management about this particular subject and the consequences, immediate consequences associated with any revelation that you may have additional accounts that is releasing team info.
Yeah, definitely. To respond to all of that, I think that's definitely true. He'll get fired. I'm going to pose a question to you, but I want to make my jokes first. So,
yes,
let's get back to the jokes. I do want to point out that he did spend, and I looked over the old tweets, about 5 to 6 tweets defending his choice of collared shirts because apparently he likes to wear big collars. So that leads you to believe that the Twitter wasn't so much like his effort to debase players for professional reasons. It really just was his pet project. Like, I like wearing the Burt Reynolds. Again, users, Google that, not tweet it. Google it.
Yeah.
Burt Reynolds like smoking the Bandit collars, and like he spent hours defending that. So there's that. Second, you're right. Neither of us can use social media well. Our show doesn't even have a Twitter. If you need help with Twitter, I suggest looking to Douglas Ridley, who works somewhere in the East Coast on Verge or something.
We don't know where exactly.
Yeah, he's a Twitter brand manager, social media extraordinaire. We'll go with that.
Sure.
Something like a financial analyst. You know, one of those terminologies that are new to the world, that don't have a lot of definition behind them, but are growing.
I love it.
Yeah, and so I guess the last point is, and on a serious note, given everything we know about LeBron possibly leaving the Cavaliers, if Colangelo is not fired, does this affect the chances LeBron even considers going to Philadelphia, given his rough relationship with ownership?
Oh, I think for sure, because now you have, in addition to the basketball questions around Markelle Fultz, and you now that, which is a big question mark, I think, for any free agent that might be going to that team. You also have a major lack of faith in the management, and I think that's not necessarily the nail in the coffin for a LeBron, the 76ers deal, but I think any professional would pause if it was even in any of our fields too, if we had the same type of story where a college president had 5 burner Twitter accounts that made fun of other colleges or other employees on the campus. I think I would be like, I don't know how I feel about that. This is weird. So I think that doesn't help anything. But I also don't necessarily think that LeBron to Philadelphia makes sense anymore either for basketball reasons. So I don't think it's going to be a big. I don't think. I think it does certainly affect others who might be looking at it, or even people that are going to potentially re-sign with the team. But we'll keep an eye on this story for sure, and we'll make sure that you know all about Twitter and all about Colangelo's many 5. Maybe by the time we come back to record next week, Franco, it's 10. Who knows? It's going to be amazing.
Well,
but I do want to push.
He can roll the convoy out. There's no stopping him then. He's like that.
He's going to have his phone. He's going to have his computer out, a laptop. He's going to have 20 different accounts generating interest in his next job. But let's move on to movie news. Franco, you and I saw Solo, a Star Wars film, or a Star Wars story. I forget exactly how he's laid out.
Get the branding right.
The story. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm tipping my hat in terms of the lead here, if you will, about how I felt. It was an okay film, just right off the bat. I enjoyed it, but it didn't feel like a Star Wars film. It felt more just like a regular film, and I think that my expectations, having grown up with the originals, watching that at home, going through the prequels, don't knock it. We were young at the time. It was cool, and then seeing the revival in theaters, there's always those moments where you're like, ooh, that's a classic Star Wars film, whether it's Rey and Kylo Ren fighting for the first time, or they're fighting in the throne room, or Han coming back in Force Awakens. It's sort of the whole narrative of seeing Luke for the first time in Last Jedi. You know, I think that those are what I'm looking for, and I didn't really get that in this one. And also, the narrative shifts in the beginning. The first half hour of the film feels a lot different than the last hour of the film. I don't want to get too deep into it, Franco, but what to start off with were your general thoughts about the film, and then we can deep dive, and you pick the topic where you want to go.
Yeah, I feel opposite of you. I actually really enjoyed the film. I think instead of being overly reverent, kind of like what The Force Awakens did, or being completely left off the wall, kind of like what The Last Jedi did, I think it nailed the spirit of Star Wars without having to be formulaic, and I enjoyed that a lot. I think, I can't pronounce the guy's last name, but the main actor, Alden, did a good job. I mean, he was just annoying enough to be early Harrison Ford, because you go back and watch A New Hope, Harrison Ford isn't quite likable until like about the end of the movie, and they nailed that really well. Woody Harrelson, what an amazing performance, I think, as always. Since he's been on Cheers,
he was solid.
He's always been solid. I think he's one of the gems of our generation of actors that will never get the appreciation he deserves because he's not pretty. And he's not eccentric enough. He's not Marlon Brando,
also,
you know.
Yeah, and also shout out 3 Billboards if you want to see him in a dramatic role. Solid choice. Anyway, sorry, Franco, I interrupted.
No, so I think it nailed a lot of the right tones, and I think there were more winks and nods to the overall Star Wars mythos in this movie than any other movie before it, and I love that. I love that when, and we're not going to give away spoilers, but one of the female characters references a martial art that she learned from somebody. It's literally a callback from a PlayStation 1 fighting game that failed and bombed at LucasArts. There's so much of stuff like that in there, so I really enjoyed it. I thought it was the most fun movie of the summer. I think it nailed what a blockbuster should be.
Wow, most fun movie. All right, yeah.
And that's where I'm at. Like Infinity War was fantastic, and I would rank that above it, but it wasn't an easy watch at parts. Whereas Solo was fun. Like it really captured kind of like when you were a kid, and if you take out the Ewoks part of the Return of the Jedi, and you just watch the Jedi parts, that's a fun movie, and that's what I kind of felt. Solo kind of was. It wasn't Empire, it wasn't A New Hope, but I'm not willing to say that Ewoks and all, it was worse than Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, no, I think, I didn't hate the film. I think I just was, in my mind, I had an expectation of what a Star Wars film should be, and it didn't meet it. But I had a good time, and I enjoyed it. I just didn't feel like I was watching an epic Star Wars film. But I do think that the nods, the only nod I didn't like, and I don't think this is necessarily a spoiler, so I'm going to say it, so I apologize if you're going to be really sad about it, but in the beginning of the film, there's a moment where you learn about how Han got his last name, and I absolutely hated that part. I thought it was really dumb. I did not like it. I'll leave it at that, and maybe I won't spoil it, but I thought it was such a silly thing that it took me out of the film, and I started laughing. So did my wife, and we were both like, this is dumb. And then that kind of set the tone for some of the other winks and nods about certain things that pop up in the film in A New Hope, because obviously this is not a spoiler because it's in A New Hope. You know, Tatooine is where Han Solo eventually ends up because of Jabba the Hutt, and there's a lot of like, hey, you know about that job in Tatooine? There's a crime lord there, and I was like, we get it. You're gonna go see Jabba the Hutt. I just felt like some of the stuff could have been a little bit more of a wink and a nod instead of an overt blasting.
See, I think you're just a huge nerd. I think the average viewer, I didn't think they were that, like, you're right, the last name one was corny, but it was surrounded by enough of it that I just didn't care enough about it, including a practical puppet, which was kind of cool. So, yeah, I think for someone like you, who overanalyzes things and tends to be very in touch with pop culture, maybe those things were kind of over the top. But for me, I didn't mind them. And don't forget, at the time, Jabba the Hutt was one of the largest gangsters in the entire universe, so it kind of makes sense to acknowledge that he's there. I think it really just depends on your familiarity with the product. And so this will be the deep seg we go with. So given that it's not performing very well in the theaters, but I do think it's a really fun film, and I actually enjoyed watching it more than I enjoyed The Last Jedi, to be personally honest about it. Why do you think it struggled so much out of the gate?
I think it stumbled even before it got to the starting line with the Lord and Miller being removed from the film and the controversy that created. And I think that's sort of, maybe that also tempered my expectation or tempered my excitement for it, because I was excited about the thought of a different take on an old character, where it seemed like they were going to move into the direction where it was a little bit, I don't know if campy is the right word, but more humor injected into Han Solo. The reports from the set, though, were a little bit weird, because Disney said, an executive said that they were getting a Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura vibe from the film, which was what the Hollywood Reporter had. So I could see, if you're Disney and you want to be protective of your property, that you might want to switch directors. But the director they went with, Ron Howard, no disrespect, but a Ron Howard film is pretty straightforward. You're not really going to get anything that's outrageous, but you're not going to get a bad film. So it was a good film. It just didn't have the flair, pun intended, of a J.J. Abrams film, Spielberg touch, Scorsese, those little kind of things that kind of make it an interesting film, or that narrative. Ron Howard delivers solid, really good films, but again, I was looking forward to a different take on it. So I think that had an issue with it. I think the other element is that, it is 6 months right after Last Jedi.
Yep.
Maybe it's fatigue. That narrative, though, I'm not quite buying into it yet, because I think we need to see how the next Star Wars film does to really make a call on whether or not generally audiences are over Star Wars in the way, at least at the peak of the hype, when Force Awakens came back. So, and the other thing too is, for whatever reason, and I know it was called out, overseas it just does not do well. And Star Wars, for whatever reason, doesn't do well in China. And I read some articles that say just sci-fi in general doesn't play well in that market. So if that's what buoys all of these films into the Mega Millions level, is the overseas market, and it bombed spectacularly in China, only pulling in $10 million. And Avengers Infinity War was still on top in China, and it wasn't even close. So I think that's really, there's a lot of things that it had going against it, but I really think it had to do with all the bad press before it.
Yeah. In response to that, I'll say, do you know how I know that you're from New York?
How's that?
Because you're a Martin Scorsese fanboy. I feel like that's a upper East Coast, blinded by the light. Like, everybody in New Jersey happens to love Springsteen.
I'm sorry.
No real good reason, just because he's one of theirs. I don't have the same reference for Scorsese that you do, I'm sorry. But
it's okay.
I think the biggest flop really for me was it suffered a lot from the lashback that came to The Last Jedi, including petitions to not include it as canon. And I think had it been paced out the year, I think it would have been fine. But I think putting it up against that backlash and then not advertising it correctly, because the gist of all of the trailers didn't match the tone of the film. Had they advertised for the film that they had made, I think it would have been successful as well. You can't fix overseas just because, you're right, stuff doesn't translate well unless it has gaiju or giant robots and things. So, I think it's a failure, not so much in the filmmaking department or the actors. I think they did a great job. I think it's really just a failure in marketing and timing. So that's my...
And I love... Yeah.
No, I was going to say that's my MBA analysis you know, but
I love it. But I love. We didn't talk about Donald Glover. He was awesome. I loved him as Lando. Fun character. I love the droids in there. I won't go too deep because it's a plot point, but I enjoyed the sequence where they are in Kessel, and that was fun. So, like I said, it's a good movie. I think you're right. The marketing, though, I was like, oh, this is not what I expected. But I think it was a fun time at the movie theater.
yeah. And in today's world, what else do you want?
What else do you really want? But we don't have too much time, so I was going to go into a long. I need more time to talk about Rat Beef, Franco. So I'm going to skip that topic.
Yeah.
And I think I'll wrap up with a question that we didn't talk about prior to recording. So putting you on the spot. But now that we are entering and we have fully entered the summer movie season, what movie of this summer are you most looking forward to seeing?
Man.
I know.
Why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that, there's a few, and I have my reasons. I'll give you 3 films I'm looking forward to, and I'll be brief about it.
Okay.
Ant-Man and the Wasp, because I love Marvel, and I enjoyed the first Ant-Man, and I think that Infinity War makes me want to see how they connect the dots in Ant-Man and the Wasp, so I'm looking forward to that. Third, for just a big, dumb action film of the summer, Skyscraper. I want to see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson running around a skyscraper that's about to burn up. And for comedy, I really want to see Tag. That's with Jeremy Renner, Ed Helms, John Hamm, Hannibal Buress, about lifelong friends that have played a 20-year-long game of tag. It's one of those films that I think it's probably going to be 90 minutes long, but I'll probably be laughing. And it's always what I look forward to the most is that one one comedy for each summer movie season that I think will be really just a fun time to see.
Yeah, so of your list, totally into Ant-Man and Wasp, only because I really enjoyed the characters and the way they did the first one. I'm a little worried because I don't know about this director, and I'm not sure he can capture that same magic, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Skyscraper, basically Die Hard with a taller building, so not overly interested personally. Even though I love The Rock, Dwayne, friend of the show.
Friend of the show, Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, so I'll see it. I won't love it. And then Tag, I think you're right. I think Tag is a throwaway comedy. Let's say I'm having the blues at work and I want to step out of my lunch hour to go watch something stupid. A couple summers ago, that was the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. That's pretty much Tag for me. Same area for me, really.
Yeah, Tag is also a film for your friends to go and get drinks before, during, and after. That's the classic. You don't really probably need to pay much attention to the plot, but it's a good time beer movie. That's how I'll call it. Maybe we'll have a new segment. What's your beer movie, Franco, for the summer? So Tag is going to be mine. But okay. Franco, we're wrapping up the show. We do not have time. We don't. And Premiere only limits us to 30 minutes. What did you learn today?
I learned that we probably don't need more than 30 minutes. And I also learned that a tweet can get you fired from network TV, but probably keep you in office as president as long as you tweet to the right people. What did you learn?
I learned that I need to step up my social media game, and I'm going to try to get 2 burner accounts going this summer that just promote the hell out of this show and argue with anybody that doesn't like it on Twitter. I think it's going to be amazing. It's going to be great.
Hashtag brand management, hashtag Doug Ridley.
For the BFF Show, I'm Brendan.
I'm Franco.
Have a great week. Bye.